Friends. I once again heartily welcome you, sir, and would like to hand over the session to you.
Thank you, Vaishali. Now, today, as the topic suggests, I would be talking about IS 456. We all know that IS 456 is our basic standard for all the civil engineers. The latest revision we have available with us is 2000 version, IS 456 year 2000. But since then, a lot of technical developments have taken place and we are progressing ahead to revise it. And I'm part of the revision panel. And today in this session, my focus would be to give you insight of the current IS 456 as well as what we are thinking to take it ahead. So let me share my presentation, and with that I will start. So already my detailed introduction has been given, but I am a very simple man. I am progressing for the betterment of the civil engineering profession. My aim today would be to give you some insight. The civil engineering field is so vast that it is very difficult to cover all the aspects of civil engineering or IS 456 or the concrete engineering in one session. But it will be my effort to give you sufficient information and knowledge that will be helpful for your profession. So before that, I would like to introduce my organization, which I founded in 2009. And as already introduced, we are providing consultancy in the field of reinforced concrete structure as well as steel structure for all kind of buildings, residential building, industrial buildings, commercial buildings, high-rise structures, chemical plants, factories, treatment plants. We do concept engineering, detailed design engineering, and project management services also. Now I would be discussing about some innovative things which are coming up. Base isolators, dampers, and other energy absorption devices would now be very prevalent in trying to come for earthquake prone areas. So we are having competence in designing the structures with these kind of things. And we are into structural assessment, retrofitting, rehabilitation, and all these things. So at the end, when we will be discussing, if you have some questions about the things which I'm not covering in this lecture, I can try to take that also. So the audience can have their own questions based on the understanding about IS 456 as well as their own construction experiences. So I move forward. First of all, I would like to acknowledge the committee members of the revision of IS 456 because IS 456 is under revision and a panel is already working. Dr. C.V.R. Murthy, IIT Madras, is the lead person for our panel who is guiding. Dr. Mahesh Tandon Consultants Private Limited, he is taking care of the pre-stressing section. Shri V.V. Arora and C.P. Vallabhgarh, he is taking care about the material and durability aspects. And the other members list is already given in this slide. So with the acknowledgement of all the committee members, I now move on to the main presentation. Now, IS 456, as the title says, plain and reinforced concrete, code of practice. Now, each and every word has its own meaning. When we say plain and reinforced concrete means this code is applicable for plain concrete, PCC, as well as RCC. And code of practice means it is a guidance code which a professional should practice. So in the first section, in the scope, IS 456-2000 covers that this code is a general structural use for plain and reinforced concrete. It covers general structural use of plain and reinforced concrete. So it is covering everything. If we call about this is the requirements of the plain concrete as well as reinforced cement concrete. Now plain cement concrete when we say if there is some reinforcement provided, maybe for the purpose of shrinkage or some other thermal stresses, that reinforcement, if it is not considered for the purpose of strength of the structure, then even with minor reinforcement, we will call it as plain concrete structures. And it is also mentioned in the code that the special structures like shell, folded plates, arches, chimneys, platform plus resistance structures, and so many like liquid retaining structures, earthquake resistant structures, all these things are covered with a different code because some of the provisions would be different for these specific purposes. But these requirements of cement and concrete would be covered through this IS 456. It means even if we are dealing with a special structure, the concrete, whether PCC or RCC, we have to follow the requirements of IS 456. So we can say that it is a basic as well as comprehensive code. Why I'm saying basic? Because it is a base document for everything. And why comprehensive? Because it is covering everything for this cement, concrete, and reinforced cement concrete. So that's why, that is the reason IS 456 is covered in the engineering colleges under the undergraduate courses also. So what is the aim of the design? Now I'm coming to the topic that why we have this standard, why this code of practice. Now the aim of the design is the achievement of an acceptable probability. Now I'm not saying that absolute meeting the requirements, but it is the acceptable probability that the structure being designed will perform satisfactorily during their intended life. Now this is the assumption which is given in the IS 456 year 2000, which we are presently using. And it also mentions that with an appropriate degree of safety. Now we are using here as appropriate degree of safety. These structures should sustain all the loads and deformations of normal construction and use, and have adequate durability and adequate resistance to the effects of misuse and fire. So in first paragraph, we are trying to cover the satisfactory performance of the structure for its life, and we also want to cover the durability and resistance to fire or some kind of overloading or misuse, right? But since last many years, the whole world is moving a step further. We are also moving a step further. At this moment, we are trying to cover the basic requirements of safety as a calculative manner, and the other things we are keeping it subjective. But what further we should have now? If we see the previous slide, we are covering the safety, serviceability, and trying to cover the durability also. But if we consider that if we have to revise the code, then what all should we cover as a theme for the IS 456? Now, the points given are already being taken care, which are safety, serviceability, durability, robustness, integrity, restorability, and we can say that ductility, sustainability, economy, aesthetics, these are all part of our design requirements. So for the design service life of the structures, these aspects one should cover. So our code should be focused to meet these requirements. I would be covering these things in detail. So if we see the current code says that the structural design, including for the durability, construction, and use in service, should be considered as a whole. And as a statement of the calculation purpose, the structural design to include strength against design forces and effects, stability, fire resistance, deflection, cracking, etc. And safe limits defined in the standard are limit state of collapse as well as limit state of serviceability. So at this moment, we are talking about two limit states. Okay, I should try to take you to the past also. In earlier years, like in IS 456 1978 version, we were talking about working stress method. Now, what working stress method was telling? We were talking about the safety. So for safety, what we were doing? we were having some factors for the stresses. So we were taking a factor of safety for the materials so that we get adequate safety, and we wanted the design to be elastic. So the working stress method was mainly focusing on the safety aspect, or we can say that our aim was that our structure should not collapse. That was the intent in working stress method. But later on, it was considered that only the strength is not the important criteria, but serviceability is also equally important. And the limit state method evolved, though at the time of 1978 version also limit state method was there, but the popular method was working stress method at that time. Gradually, working limit state method picked up in 2000 version. The limit state of design method was popular, and in the limit state method of design, we were focusing on a limit state of collapse and limit state of serviceability. Now, people who studied during that period were a bit confused, because for the limit state, we were having factor of safety for materials as well as for the loads. Whereas in working stress method, we were having a factor for the material only. There was no factor for the load. So, but gradually people could understand the requirements of limit state method are more rational, and shifted for the design towards the limit state method of design. Those some consultants continued with working stress method for the water retaining structure or some special kind of structures. But in this revision, it is intended that we will totally abolish, or we will totally remove the working stress method, because working stress method is only focusing on the collapse prevention. It is not taking care of the other aspects. So in the limit state method of design, in the current standard, when we have limit state of collapse and limit state of serviceability, some other aspects needed to be added. So in the revision, what we are considering is that besides limit state of collapse and limit state of serviceability, we would have limit state of durability. Though in earlier standard, durability was defined as a subjective one, but now it will be totally analytical one. Now we have further added the limit state of robustness, limit state of integrity, and limit state of restorability. So now in the coming standard, I should tell you as a committee member that the standard is in a very advanced stage, and by the end of this year, all of you should be commenting on that, because we aim that by October or by November this year, our document should be released for wide circulation. And the wide circulation means it would be available for the engineers and professionals to comment on, so that we get the opinion and feedback of all the professionals who are the stakeholders of this standard. And then the committee would meet again next year earlier and would try to finalize, so that by mid of next year, we should be able to finalize the revised document. So I am just giving you the insight, what is going on, so that you be ready and you prepare yourself for what is coming. So at this moment, we have limit state of collapse and limit state of serviceability, but we would be having limit state of durability coming, a limit state of robustness, limit state of integrity, and limit state of restorability. These six limit states we would have to cover for the designs. The stress resultants in the members may be obtained by linear analysis of the structure. Now this is what has been proposed, is that the stress resultants, like for this collapse, serviceability, durability aspects, when we design, we can design with the linear analysis, but when we have to check the integrity, non-linear analysis would be performed. Now there is a term coming, linear as well as non-linear. Many of you might be aware that the stress strain curve, if we see, there is a straight part of curve which we call as elastic region, that is called the linear part of the load stress system. It means when we are designing in the linear analysis, we are considering that our stresses will be within that straight line portion. But if we see the collapse or if we see the failure, either for the concrete or for the steel, the curve becomes non-linear after a certain deformation, or I would say after a certain level of strain. The curve becomes non-linear, and the non-linearity plays a very important role for the analysis when we have to see the final safety or the collapse system or the integrity. So if we have to check the integrity, we would have to see that the analysis is performed for the non-linearity of the material properties also. And it is also importantly what we have decided that no redistribution of moment should be permitted between the beams and columns of the frame members when we are doing the linear analysis. In the linear analysis, as per the softwares when we do in STAAD or ETAB or any other software, we will not allow any redistribution of moments. So the objectives, what are the objectives of the safety? Now I am coming to the limit states one by one. We have 6 limit states, and the first limit state is the safety. Earlier we were calling is limit state of collapse. So we are not now using the collapse word, but we are saying that it is the limit state of safety. So in the safety, what we intend is there should be no damage, even after the effects of fatigue loading. If there is cyclic loading, even then there should be no damage, or if there is any, it should be very, very limited. That is the objective. Then the system, the design should have sufficient strength to resist lateral loads also. Now we are generally designing for the gravity loads, vertical loads, downward loads, but at the same time we should have sufficient margins for the lateral capacity, lateral load capacity also. And the other thing is when we call as safety objectives, as we know that there will be some deformations when there is a load. So the structure will have deformations, but the deformations should be so limited. The limits of the deformations should be such that there is no damage. So in this limit state of safety, what we intend is all the 6 equations of balancing, all the 3 forces, all the 3 moments are stable. We have sufficient capacity for axial force, for bending moment, for shear force, torsional moment, and the combined effect of axial force and bending moment, combined effect of axial force with shear force, combined effect of axial force, shear force, bending moment capacity. All things should be having a sufficient capacity so that there is no damage. So if there is no damage, we feel that our structure is safe. Now for calculating the safety, we should know which are the applicable loads. Here I am taking you to the requirements which IS 456 says that we should assess a reasonable design load, and to calculate the design loads we have guidance from IS 875 and IS 1893 and some other codes also. IS 875 gives us the requirements for the dead load, because in part 1 we get the unit weights, in part 2 we get the imposed load or the live load, which we used to call. The requirements of live loads or imposed loads is given in IS 875 part 2. Part 3 covers the wind load requirements, how we should take the wind loads into the structure. Part 4 is for snow loads where there is snowfall. And part 5 is the special loads and load combination, which covers so many additional loads, which probably we will be taking up in detail now. But earlier in IS 456, there is a basic mention about the safety of some other loads, which are covered in part 5 of IS 875. And for earthquake resistance design, IS 1893 gives the requirements. Some other forces and effects are also there, which are covered in Indian standards. Like there would be some foundation settlement or foundation movement, which is covered in IS 1904. There will be some elastic axial shortening. Soil and fluid pressures would be there. Some vibrations might be there. Temperature, creep, shrinkage, fatigue effects. Also, we may have to cover. We may have to cover impact load, which is covered in IS 875, part 5. But the details were not there during those times. Probably we would be having very much clarity for designs of impact also in the coming time. Some erection loads are also there, which becomes critical during the execution time. So that is also covered. And stress concentration effect due to point load is also covered in some part of the standards. So these were the things which were taking care for the safety. Now coming to limit state of serviceability. Now first of all, we need to understand what is serviceability, because safety or collapse prevention, we all know that if there is a crack or damage, we consider that as a limit state of safety. But serviceability, many people would have to understand like that ISO, everybody know that there is an ISO organization, International Standard Organization, which makes the standards in all the areas, all the domains of the technical and non-technical, or I would say technical and management aspects. And India is also a founder member of ISO, and in BIS also we participate for the development of international standards. So in ISO 2394, the definitions of the serviceability limit state is given as a state which corresponds to the conditions beyond which the specified service requirements for a structure or structural element are no longer met. Now again, this statement covers subjective things. Requirements of the serviceability are no longer met, that becomes the limit of the serviceability. So what are the requirements that a serviceability should cover? So in principle, there may be any condition that makes the building structure owner feel uncomfortable. Because when we use, or I would say that when the building is in service, we should feel comfortable when we are inside the building or any structure. So if anything that is there which is making us uncomfortable, it means we are going away from the serviceability. So there would be some limit that will define that we are in comfortable zone or uncomfortable zone. So for concrete structures, there may be some factors like corrosion of reinforcement, which deteriorates the concrete and gives us a lot of cracking, spalling. All these things are visible. That makes us uncomfortable. So cracking is, or I would say the rusting of the reinforcement is one aspect of serviceability. Deformation, or I would say deflection or vibration, these are other aspects of serviceability. So we have to cover everything so that our building remains serviceable during its design life. So the limit state of serviceability, which will be defined clearly in the standard, is the strain, which causes deflection, cracking, what should be the allowable cracking. Now, how would we define the limit state of serviceability for cracking? By defining the acceptable cracking width. For the normal structures, probably we may go for 0.2 mm, but for some structures, if durability is a concern and aesthetics is a concern, we may have to limit the crack width of 0.1 millimeter as the limit for the serviceability. Similarly, for deformations, relative translation or rotation, there will be some limiting guidelines which will make the limit state of serviceability. Now coming to the factor of durability. Limit state of durability is very difficult to define, and when we started, we were all in a soup that how would we define the limits for the durability. Now again, some of the members thoroughly examined the subject, and now we are confident that we would be able to cover it in a very rational manner. So to cover it, what all are the factors which affect the durability? It is very important to understand. Now, the durability might be affected due to adverse environment, corrosive, or sometimes the environment is such that it is not supporting to the concrete or RCC members, and aggressive environment is there. The cover to the embedded steel plays an important role in durability because the cover protects the reinforcement steel from the external environment. The type and quality of the constituent materials. Now, the concrete itself is made of many materials. Now, the quality of the constituents also plays very important role for the durability. Cement content, water cement ratio, or I would say additionally the type of cement what we are using, though that comes under the constituent part. This plays a very important role. And beyond the designer's reach, ultimately the workmanship, the compaction level, the curing, all these things are also very important when we consider the durability. Shape and size of the members also play a very important role. Ultimately, your design abilities, your reinforcement detailing, all these become an important part for the durable design, and ultimately the maintenance. Because if there is some minor, I would say minor strain in the RCC which require maintenance, and if we delay the maintenance, the damage to the RCC structure would be higher and higher. So proper maintenance would protect the system and would ensure the durability. So some of the potential deterioration mechanism caused by durability problems are classified here. So these are the things which will be covered in the revised code, in which we are trying to cover the aspects which are the potential causes which we have to limit. Now, corrosion, I have already discussed that reinforcement corrosion plays a very important role in deterioration or affecting the durability. And the corrosion may be due to the permeation of the atmospheric carbon dioxide into the concrete, that we call as carbonation induced corrosion. All of you might have used the word carbonation, and carbonation is in particular important from the durability point of view for this carbonation induced corrosion point of view. Then other aspect would be important for the corrosion protection is the presence of significant level of chlorides in concrete. Because in concrete, you have many constituents. Your water may have chloride, your aggregates might have some chloride, your chemical admixtures may contain some chlorides, and overall, whatever chloride is inside the concrete, that may induce corrosion. Second is the physical deterioration process. Now, physical deterioration is like abrasion, freeze and thawing, weathering, shrinkage. All these aspects also affect the durability. And the third, the chemical deterioration, which is very, very, I would say, important to understand, because many a times we miss this kind of considerations. In that, where we have potential of sulfate attacks. Like if there is a sulfate attack, if the say for the case of foundations, if our RCC structure is inside the ground and the soil has sulfate content, or the groundwater has sulfate content at a risky level, then that water or the aggressive soil sulfate, these can attack the concrete and can deteriorate the concrete itself. So it can be very harmful for the RCCs, for the life of the structure. And the other important thing is that alkali aggregate reaction. Many of you might have heard about this word alkali aggregate reaction. And I would explain in one single sentence that in the concrete, because of the hydration of the cement, you have calcium hydroxide inside the concrete. And this calcium hydroxide is the alkali component. And your aggregates, which are generally siliceous, if these aggregates are reactive to this calcium hydroxide or other alkalis available in the concrete, then that chemical reaction can deteriorate the aggregate and the bonding between the concrete elements, and ultimately your whole concrete inside the concrete member or the structural member can deteriorate, and the life of the structure would get affected. So this kind of chemical deterioration system has to be studied before we take the final call for the selection of cement or other things. This IS 456 already takes care of these aspects, but in this revision, it will be more thoroughly covered. So now coming to the design life. At this moment, this IS 456 2000, do we have any guidance for the design life? Though we call about the safety, durability, and serviceability, we have some prescriptive requirements for the durability, but we do not know forward life. But now, because we are trying to make a limit state of durability, so we should have our own decided design life. So the code would suggest a tentative design life one should adopt. Now this is the table which shows that for a temporary structure, we may have a service design life of 10 years. For some buildings or industries where some replaceable structural elements would be there, we may have our design life of 10 to 25 years. For agricultural or some other similar structures, we may have a design life of 15 to 30 years. And for normal buildings, residential or otherwise, our design life could be 50 years, normal buildings. But for high-rise buildings, group housings, critical important buildings, hospitals, and other kind of important buildings, we may decide our design life between 50 to 75. We can decide higher also, but it is a guidance that we should have a design life of 50 to 75 years for these kind of structures. And for monumental structures, bridges, metro railway, some other things, the design life should be very, very high because these are very big assets to the nation and need to be protected better. So our design life for these kind of buildings should be 100 or more years. Now this becomes this assumption, or I would say this requirement of the design life, design service life, becomes the important parameter when we have to calculate the requirement for the durabilities. Now durabilities would be worked out based on this limit state. The limit state of durability mentions that it shall be decided such that the deterioration produced by chemical or physical actions, as I explained, we may have deterioration because of chemical actions or physical actions. So through any of the actions, the deterioration under the action of design loads or other loads based on the structural analysis, which may deteriorate the characteristics of the concrete or reinforcement, does not lead to an ultimate limit state, a serviceability limit state, a restorability limit state, or a fatigue limit state during its design life. It means if we have targeted that our structure has to live 100 years, it should meet the requirement of limit state, serviceability, restorability, fatigue, all limit states till 100 years, not for just 5 or 10 years. It is not like that we have designed a building and constructed and it is serving safely, serviceability requirements are met for 10, 20, 30 years. And after that, there is a major requirements of retrofitting or rehabilitations. So that is not done. Once a structure is made with the intended design life, it should meet that design life with minimal requirements of maintenance, and it should safely meet the requirements of all the limits of safety, serviceability, and restorability and fatigue. So in the code, revised code, this climatic zone map is also being included because there will be many factors which will have to be calculated. I can give you just hint about that for the corrosion induced deterioration, you will have to calculate the depth of carbonation that is expected as per the environmental conditions for the design life. So you have to decide your cover based on the design life calculations. You may have to design many other things, your material and strength and other parameters based on the design life. So once you have decided the design life, you have to calculate for the durability based on the standard guidelines. Now coming to the limit state of robustness. Now what is robustness? This is the new term which is coming. Earlier we were not much concerned about the blast or impact or the fire. Though in the 456 material chapter, requirements for the covers were mentioned for the fire safety, and in National Building Codes, selection of material for 2 hour or 4 hour or 1 hour fire ratings have been given. But in this standard up now, which is coming up in IS 456, we are trying to cover the structural requirements for the robustness, which will be covering blast resistance, impact resistance, and fire resistance. So be ready for that. I'm coming to the next slide, which is giving your limit state of integrity. Now, what is integrity? Suppose you are in a building and accidentally or incidentally there is overstressing in some part of the building, and some part or some structural member or a single structural member exceeds the safety limit, and the stresses becomes and the stresses crosses the requirement, crosses the limit state of say safety. And deformability also, because when this the stress will increase, strains will go high, and it may cross the safety and deformability limits. Then our standard wants to say that even if locally for some single member or some part of the structure, if overstressing is there, or I would say in other terms, if a partial failure is there, it should not lead to the progressive failure. The building or the structure should have some reserve members or some reserve strength. We call it as redundancy. So there should be some kind of redundancy available in the structure, which allows the structure to redistribute its load to the adjoining members. So it means there should be a proper integration of the structural members, which will allow the redistribution of forces from one member to other member if a single member or a part of the member becomes overstressed or it fails partially. And the other requirement is that because of the redistribution, the stresses on the adjoining members may increase, and these adjoining members should have sufficient reserve strength and deformation capacity, so that in case of this kind of additional residual structure carry additional stresses, the residual structure to carry the additional loads and the load effects in them, and not exceed the design limits of the safety and deformability. So you should have some additional reserve strength in the structural members. So with this requirement, you would be able to meet the requirement of integrity, and with this we will be able to prevent the progressive collapse. Now the sixth limit, which we call as limit state of restorability. Limit state of restorability means if due to any reason, maybe because of earthquake or some other reasons, because of some any unknown or unforeseen reasons, if the building goes into, if the building crosses the limit state of safety, then there would be some damage. So the code says that if there are some structural members which are difficult to take care later on, if this structural member or the part of the structure is non-accessible and we cannot reach there, then we have to ensure that there will be no damage in this kind of elements. And if the building's members or some part of the structural members are reachable, then we should be having some provision so that if there is a damage or some cracking because of this earthquake forces or some other unforeseen forces, we should be able to stiffen it, we should be able to strengthen it, so that the structure gets restored. So overall, the philosophy of IS 456 becomes, if we see this load and deformation curve, that there will be some deformation or the stresses which will be acting at the serviceability level. Once our stresses exceeds the serviceability level, even then we should have margin to keep it in a safe limit. And even if beyond that this deformation goes, even then we should have robustness to cover it because of some blast or some fire. And at the next level, if part or the small area of the structure gets failed, the whole building should, the balance part of the building should be able to take that forces so that it prevents the collapse, and here becomes the role of integrity. So overall, for the complete design life, we have to meet the durability requirements. So the 5 limits are covered in this graph. The 6th is the restorability, which we need at any stage, right? So all the philosophy I have discussed, that we have to achieve this level or that level. Now, how would we achieve that? So for that, the code would be having now 2 aspects, 2 processes. First is the prescriptive process, and second is the closed loop process. Now, again, these 2 terms might be new for the audience. Prescriptive process is the same process what is being followed at this moment, that you first have to assume some structural member sizes, then you have to calculate the loads and forces, then you analyze, and then you design, and you check the requirements of the codal provisions, whether the requirements are met. If the requirements are met, you finish the design and do the detailing, and then you do the execution. So this is the prescriptive process, but at the end, we do not know what would be the performance of the building at a later stage, because we have just met the prescriptive requirements of the code. So what next? If we want to go further, then we have a closed loop process in which after the design, you have finalized the detailing, and then you model this final design in the nonlinear model and see the behavior. In the nonlinear model, you will be having the more precise assessment of the behavior, and then you cross-check the requirements, the theme requirements of the code, and if that requirements are met, your design is final, and with that closed loop process, you would be having confidence on the actual performance or behavior of the structure. So these will be the 2 design processes involved. Now coming to the significance of the proposed version revision, because now since last 30-40 minutes, I am discussing about the theme of the code. I am not discussing the prescriptive requirements here much, though I will be taking some slides to give you an idea where we are moving towards. But with this discussion today, at least many of you would be able to understand the current codal requirements and the provisions which are prevailing today. And after 2 years, probably, we would be moving to the next step. So the development for this new code, what we are calling it as a unified concrete code. Now, at this moment, we are discussing only plain and reinforced concrete, but in the revision, we would be covering it for the pre-stressed concrete also. At this moment, for pre-stressing, we have another code, IS 1343. But IS 1343 would be it will merge with IS 456 requirements, and the IS 1343 would be withdrawn. So there will be single code. We can call it as unified concrete code, which would be covering all the requirements of the concrete buildings or concrete structures. Now, at this moment in the present code, we are dealing with the concrete grades of up to M80. And mostly the requirements or the provisions are given for up to M60. But now, as per the concrete technology developments, M100 grade concrete is also being produced and is being used. So the code is going to cover the requirements based on a lot of research is being done in India, in many IITs and research institutes for higher grade concrete also. So we would be covering the requirements of concrete and with details for the behavior of the concrete up to M100 grade. So this will be a quite jump of technological concrete technology from up to M60 to M100, in fact. Although the present code covers up to M80, but some of the requirements of concrete beyond M60 would be changed now, because some of the requirements might not be very consistent, which is being found out based on the research data. So these things we'll be covering with the limit state 6 limits and service design life requirements. And I wish in near future we may cover a life cycle monitoring system also, for which some countries and in India also some advances have been taken. Some gauges are being put to understand what is the actual performance for the life cycle management. But first of all, we have to design the structure for the design life, which is being guided through this standard. So now some salient features for the proposed IS 456 I am trying to cover. Now we would be covering two sets of design loads. Earlier we were covering only basic design loads, which were dead load, imposed load, wind load, earthquake load. Mainly four type of loads were being discussed all over everywhere. These were considered as the main factors. But now the complete list of forces and in fact, some of you would be a bit confused. What is force loads and what is displacement loads? I would be just taking you to the slides. Two sets of design loads, 6 limit states. I've already discussed the limit states because these are the basic theme for the design. And we have two approaches for the limit state of safety. The approach is like strain limiting stage, in which we are having the capacity for the actual force and bending moments, and the strength limit state, which would be covering shear force and torsional moments. So now coming to the loads, as I called force load and displacement load. So these are the loads which are force loads. Dead load, imposed load, wind load, snow load, earth pressure is again a force, water pressure is again a force. If there is a blast, because we are trying to cover this blast in our robustness, so we will have to calculate the blast load also. Impact load also being covered in robustness, so impact load might have to be calculated. Pre-stressing force for the pre-stressed concrete structures. That is again this is being considered at this moment also, but it is now being considered as a proper pre-stressing force for the different analysis. And construction erection load, this is also given a prominent position. So these 10 type of force loads, and you would have 6 types of displacement loads. Now what are these displacement loads? Your temperature load is a kind of displacement, because in the summer or during the higher temperature, the structure expands because of the thermal coefficient of concrete. So the expansion is there, so it is a displacement or the elongation because of temperature loads. Then shrinkage loads, creep load. There might be some elastic shortening because of say for the columns. If there is a tall building, a lot of axial pressure is there. Because of this axial stress, there will be some kind of elastic shortening load, so it is a kind of displacement. You may have foundation settlement, movement rotation, this is also a displacement. And ground shaking or the earthquake. Now some people consider earthquake as a force load, but actually it is a displacement load. So this is being considered here in the earthquake load is coming under the section of displacement load. So there are now 10 plus 6, 16 type of loads. So the load combinations would become a bit complex. Which load would be considered with which other loads? So this is a comprehensive table at this moment proposed. That dead load would be, of course, it is a permanent load. It has to be covered under all load combinations. And which other loads would be combined with dead loads? This table gives in detail. So you may have 10 or 12 number of load combinations, in which you may have to cover some load combinations like this. And again, these are the basic combinations, but I have not taken this slide for the load factors, and you may have different load factors for these different load combinations. When we are covering, say, earthquake load we are covering in load combination 5, 6, 8, and 10. So here the load combinations would be having some different load factors. So with different load combinations, with different load factors, your analysis would cover the requirements of this load. Now coming to the salient requirement of the structural analysis. At this moment, we are not forcing the designers to go for non-linear analysis. This code would guide us or suggest us to go for linear elastic displacement method analysis to calculate the internal actions produced by design loads as per the load combinations already given. A three-dimensional model with material and cross-sectional properties as specified in the standard would have to be considered, and respective limit states have to be taken care. So this is going to be the structural analysis system which we are taking today in this revision, which will be coming next year. But as I have already mentioned, when we go for closed loop analysis, when we want to have our design for robustness and integrity, we may have to go for non-linear elastic analysis, non-linear analysis. Sorry. So it will be depending on the structural requirement, but basic analysis, the linear elastic analysis, displacement analysis is allowed at this moment. But we would like to have some better, or I would say realistic analysis. Some of you who are dealing with tall buildings, tall structures, or some other special structures, or maybe some other countries' code, they are aware that the stiffnesses which we consider need some modifications when we go for actual practical design. Now, for the stiffness, other properties remains almost same, but the moment of inertia becomes the critical factor. So the code suggests that if we are designing with the earthquake load combination effects, you can use these modifications for the moment of inertia, in which for slabs, because we understand now, I should tell you in 2 minutes that what is the concept behind this modification. Now we consider that when the structure is made in tension zone, the concrete is going to be cracked because concrete is not good in tension. So above neutral axis we have compression, concrete is intact. Below neutral axis, concrete is going to be cracked. So there will be a crack section. However, for the pre-stressed concrete members, the structural members may be considered as uncracked. But other than pre-stressed members, generally we have a cracked section. For crack section, a normal condition without earthquake, we have some in the beams we have more tension. In the tension zone, the cracking is more, so the modification is more. So we have to consider only 70% of the gross moment of inertia. For slabs, we consider even further less because slab is a thin element and should not play much role in the stiffness system of the frame analysis. So the the moment of inertia for the slab is only 35% of the I gross. And for columns, we can have 10% reduction. That is, for columns and walls, we can have 0.9 times I gross as our modified moment of inertia. But when we consider the earthquake, during earthquake, there will be further cracking. And what we want is the columns should have higher strength. We should have strong column and weaker beam. It means that our column should be designed for higher moment. And in the stiffness distribution, if your column would have higher stiffness, it will attract more moment. So for that purpose also, and the other reason is that when there will be hinge formation, when there will be cracking in the beams, the stiffness loss will be more in the beams. So when we do the earthquake analysis, we have to consider the stiffness modification for the system. As for slabs, again, we have to take 25% of I gross, but for beams, damage is more. So I gross will be only 35% of I gross, whereas for columns, it is 70% of I gross, and walls also behave like column for 70% of the I gross. Now, here we have given the stiffness modification, but at the same time, because ultimately the internal stress distribution is based on your stiffness parameters, relative stiffness of the members. So standard allows you to use either cracked section or cross section or transform section also. Now at this moment, what we are using is either we are taking the I for the concrete part only. But we know that if the reinforcement steel is inside the concrete, if it is a RCC member with significant reinforcement, the reinforcement would also play a role in the moment of inertia. So code allows you to use this transformed moment of inertia also, and suggests to use modular ratio as 280 divided by 3 plus 0.9 FCK. Earlier we were using this modular ratio for the working stress method design. So in that also the modular ratio was given and defined as 280 upon 3 sigma CBC, but now no more sigma CBC because we are not discussing about any allowable limit state, allowable stresses of concrete, but we have FCK as the characteristic strength. So based on the characteristic strength, the modular ratio formula has been defined in the code. This is another screen which shows you the critical section for the shear. At this moment, we have 3 diagrams in the IS 456 which guides you the critical section. But here we have tried to cover further, and we have tried to cover all the aspects. Herein, it is important to understand that if your column or the supporting member is in compression and your loads is uniformly distributed load, UDL is there, then your critical section for shear is D distance apart. If this depth of the beam is D, then this distance from the support is D. Similar in this case, for a D depth of beam, you have UDL and your critical section is D distance away from the support. But if this column is not a compression condition, it is in tension condition, column is just hanging and the load is like this, then your critical section for the shear is at the face. So this is this needs to be clear to everybody that critical section for shear is not always D distance away, but it is D distance away only for the cases where you have UDL and your column is in compression below, support is in compression. Similarly, even for this case, when your column is in compression, but your point load is within the 2D distance. If your concentrated load is there, which is coming within 2D distance, even then your critical section for shear will be at the face of the support. Similarly, for the corbel, for a 2D distance, when the point load is coming within 2D distance, your critical shear section would be at the face of the support. So this is the addition in the code, and we all should know because this is a general thing. Now coming to the materials. Quickly, I would try to cover in 10-15 minutes about the materials. Already we have a material section in IS 456 which covers cement, aggregates, admixtures, water, reinforcement, and their properties. Then what next in this standard? I would just discuss here one by one. At this moment, current code defines all the type of cements available. In this revision of code, we have classified it as general purpose cement and specific application cements. General purpose cement covers which are what? OPC, PSC, fly ash based PPC, and calcium clay based PPC. So if you consider PPC, PSC, and OPC, all these cements are general purpose cement and can be used in any kind of condition. But if you have certain specific condition where you want to have some special cement, like sulfate resistant Portland cement, where you have sulfate attack probabilities, like I have discussed for the chemical deterioration, to prevent from the chemical deterioration, if you need to use sulfate resistant Portland cement, then you can use this sulfate resistant cement as per IS 12330. Similarly, now we have composite cement, which is a very new cement as per standard 16415. Probably at this moment this cement is allowed for the PCC only, but with some modification later on it would be used for RCC also. Similarly, microfine ordinary Portland cement is also available as per 16993, which was not earlier available, so it was not covered in earlier standard. So all these things are coming, and these will be taken care suitably in the revised code. So coming to the next is the again from the prevention from the chemical deterioration. Water becomes a very important constituent in the concrete, which if it is good, then concrete might be good. If the water quality is bad, then it takes away the life of the concrete. So the water quality, water parameters are now inconsistent with the international standards. And this time we have differentiated the requirement for the water for the consumption within the concrete and the water for curing. Now we will have a different parameter, like we have allowed higher sulfate content and chloride content for the curing water. Because sometimes what happens, you have water available at site which is not meeting the requirement for the concrete mix. So for concrete mixing in concrete, you may have to have special water, but for curing purpose, you might be allowed to use the available water. Now coming to the chemical admixtures, all of us are aware that nowadays the concrete is hard to believe that the concrete is made without chemical admixture, because more or less some or the other, some chemical admixtures are being used for some kind of improvement in the concrete properties. So chemical admixtures have been covered in detail, and now you can see a complete table of this kind of chemical admixtures which we are proposing. Like we have air entraining admixtures, retarding admixtures, accelerating admixtures, water reducing admixtures. All these kind of admixtures are being presently used widely and already covered in current IS 456 also, but not in a tabular manner, but as a requirement manner. Here we are guiding the users that how and which type of admixtures one can use. Nowadays, shrinkage compensating admixtures are also available, but structural concrete, we are not allowing it. The shrinkage compensating admixture can be used only for the some repair concrete or some kind of jacketing concrete, but not for the structural concrete as a whole. So shrinkage compensating admixture is not allowed, but this is the admixture which is available. So till the code is coming, till the code is coming, you as aware engineer, you should not allow the shrinkage compensating admixture. Now significant is another corrosion inhibiting admixture. Nowadays, because the durability is important, and chemical, or you would say, I would say corrosion related problems are more at this moment. So corrosion problem handling is tedious, and we have some corrosion inhibitors chemicals available in the market, which might be used to add some life, or I would say to reduce the process of corrosion for the better life of the structure. Similarly, other permeability reducing admixture and other kind of admixtures are also available, which will be covered in this revised code. Reinforcement steel, almost same what we already have. We will be using this reinforcement steel for this purpose. Now the concrete properties, a bit of difference. Sorry, here the slide has some mistake. For ordinary concrete, we have M10 to M20 grade classification. Standard concrete is M25 to M60 classification. And the third classification is high strength concrete is from M65 to M100. It is not M10, it should be M100. So this is the classification for the concrete. And the important thing I wanted to tell you that this is the probable change, major change, which you would see in the code, that the modulus of elasticity being suggested is not 5000 root FCK, because in current code it is 5000 under root FCK. It will be modified with this formula, 10,000 FCK ki power 3.3, sorry. So the revised formula for the modulus of elasticity is going to be 10,000 times 0.3 FCK power 0.3. And to tell you that this present modulus of elasticity is just modulus of elasticity, but the code now classifies that because for strength we are using the characteristic strength. For other properties also we should have characteristic values. So we are coming up with the characteristic values for the modulus of elasticity, and this formula gives you the characteristic modulus of elasticity. Poisson ratio is being suggested as 0.2 for uncracked concrete, but for cracked concrete, the Poisson ratio is 0. Characteristic modulus of rupture formula is also being changed because now we are using the characteristic value. So it will be giving you the characteristic value is 0.5 root FCK, and the split tensile strength is almost 60 to 70% of the modulus of rupture. So the characteristic splitting tensile strength formula becomes 0.33 root FCK. So these are the suggested modifications. Some more requirements which are coming is like minimum member thickness or minimum member sizes. Now from next year, probably you would be seeing that the slab thickness, structural slab thickness would be 125 mm minimum. At this moment, what I am seeing, some designers give 115 mm thickness also for small spans, but it is suggested that the thickness should not be less than 125 mm because of many other reasons also. From strength point of view, you might be able to meet with lesser thickness, but from durability, from fire resistance, from so many other factors, the slab thickness requirement is now being suggested as 125 mm minimum. Beam sizes, beam width will not be less than 250 mm and beam depth will not be less than 300 mm structural beam. Column sizes would be having minimum dimensions of 300 mm by 300 mm. Structural walls would have minimum thickness of 160 mm. No single curtain will be allowed. The structural wall shall have both face reinforcement. So two curtain system would be required and 160 mm thickness is being proposed. For non-structural walls, for some partitions, etc., you may have lesser thickness, in which you may use single curtain of reinforcement, but not for the structural walls, what we call a shear wall also. So for shear wall or structural wall, the thickness, minimum thickness would be 160 mm. For footings, it is already same, 150 mm at the corner cantilever tip. Some minor relaxation has been given for small buildings of 3 stories, where story height is less, there is no straight floor, and everything is very nominal. In that case, your column size may be relaxed to 250 mm by 250 mm from 300 by 300 for the main structures. So in residential buildings, small buildings, 2 and 3-story building, your column size may be small as 250 by 250, and the beam size is also being relaxed to 200 mm by 250 mm. So this is the relaxation for the smaller buildings. Now coming to the, this is again a new addition being proposed. At this moment, there is no correlation between the grade of concrete and the reinforcement grade what we are using. It is being proposed that for if you want to use higher grade of steel, your concrete should also be compatible to that. It is not that you are using M25 grade concrete and you are using reinforcement of 600 strength grade. So this is the table which gives you the requirement that if you are using say 500D grade for the earthquake zone, you need to design with 500D grade, then your concrete should be minimum M30. If you are using a normal structure for FE 500 grade, then you may go for M25 grade. Similarly, if you are using pre-tensioning in the concrete, then your requirement is M40 grade. But if you are going for post-tension pre-stressing, then your concrete grade would be M35. So these are the correlations or the compatible concrete grade and steel grade have been defined in this table. Now coming to one more requirement of the durability, which I was mentioning as the fire safety. The code has given prescriptive requirements for the fire resistance. For different fire rating requirements, fire resistance requirements, these fire resistance requirements you would get from the National Building Code, because for different type of buildings, your fire resistance requirement would be different. So there is a classification given in National Building Code which tells you that whether you need 2-hour fire rating, 4-hour fire rating, or 1-hour fire rating, and in which area, what kind of fire rating you require. So based on that fire rating requirement, you may choose the nominal cover to the reinforcement. Say for slabs, continuous in nature, and if your concrete aggregates Now here again, this is a further one step ahead. At this moment, when we talk about aggregates, we just use the word aggregates. We do not know what type of aggregates we are using. In this revision, we are proposing that we should be aware about the type of aggregates also. And if we are using siliceous aggregates, our requirement would be different than the carbonaceous aggregates. And we may have some lightweight artificial aggregates or other aggregates, which may give you some other requirements. So based on the siliceous, carbonaceous, and lightweight aggregates, you will have requirement for the cover, which is indicative here. In the wide circulation draft, some of these requirements might get changed. All this information what I have given in this presentation is based on the present state of document. So this is all what I wanted to tell you. The next thing is that sustainability, beautiful aesthetics, everything we should consider. In my last slides, I generally show this bamboo building, which is for the RCC structure also. This roof is nicely being made with the help of bamboos. So we should think of sustainability in which we can use some materials which are locally available, sustainable materials, and we can give aesthetic looks with durability, sustainability, and meeting the theme of the standard. Like you see this, even with the bamboo also, you can have quite good connections, all type of connections you can make as per your structural requirements. And that is all about my presentation. I want to give you one information that in this 1 hour lecture, I was trying to cover the requirements of IS 456, which is prevailing, and the requirements which will be there after 1 year or so. At this moment, my main motive is to guide the country or the students who are into this making of this shape for the structural and civil engineering. We are giving some trainings also besides our consultancy organization work. These trainings would be focused on skill development and capacity enhancement. As you are all listening this lecture for the upgradation of yourself, some of you might be students, some of you might be interested in understanding in detail. We are opening up, we are coming up with an online training of 2 months, which would be having 3 weekly lectures. These lectures will be of almost same 90 minutes duration. And in these lectures, it will not be just a lecture, but it will be like a workshop. It will be one-to-one interaction classes, as well as direct learning. Study materials will be given, practical projects will be taken, and in 8 weeks, 3 weeks daily classes, we would be covering theoretical aspect as well as using STAAD, one complete project design, including foundation, slab, beam, column, staircase, everything. So those of you who are interested in joining this course will be starting from next Monday, 1st June 2020. Some details are shown in this slide, and probably on YouTube, one link would also be displayed. If somebody wants to register yourself, you can register. It is a paid training, it is not a free training. Nominal fees is chargeable, and some of you might be interested, so you can use this training for your upgradation. And in the last, I would like to say that it is not the natural disasters which kill people. It is basically the inappropriate built environment which collapse and kill. As a civil engineer, we must strive to contribute for the built environment